It's time for Parts in the Sum of the Whole. A weekly podcast designed to inform the masses on just about any topic you can think of. We always encourage your comments, so drop us a line. And now, from our world headquarters in Bidwell, Ohio, here's the philosopher monk, Ronnie Glenn, and the Vance man, Brian Vance.
Welcome to Parts in the Sum of the Whole for the 7th of July already. I hope everybody had a great 4th of July holiday. Well, lots to get to today, and first of all, I want to highlight some things that we have coming up on the show today. Our Dirty Laundry segment is coming up.
Well, I think this one has a wider implication than Paula Deen did.
Okay, yeah, Paula was our very first one. We have another great trivia question coming up later on, and this week you can win some great food, your choice of Red Lobster, the Olive Garden, Longhorn Steakhouse, Bahama Breeze, and Seasons 52 restaurants. Wow, a lot to choose from there. So hopefully you work hard on the trivia question, and you're the first one to post the correct answer.
Should be easier this week. You still might have to do some research, but not too hard.
That's right. We want to welcome a lot of veterans. We invited a lot of veterans to listen to our show this week, and we'd love to have you to stay. But we're doing a couple of veterans specials towards the end of the show, talking about the long fight, the long battle that veterans have. Once they get out of the service or fight the war, they come home and have to spend year after year after year, many years, fighting for their disability benefits. We'll touch on that. Of course, we do record our show ahead of time, but as of recording time, breaking news in San Francisco, California, where an airplane crashed yesterday.
Yeah, 777.
Last we checked, at least one person was unaccounted for. They had, I think, up to 60 at one point unaccounted for. The Asiana Airlines flight out of Seoul, South Korea, it actually crashed while landing at San Francisco International Airport yesterday, littering the runway with debris. I'm sure you probably saw it if you were flipping through the channels, and actually forced passengers to jump down the emergency inflatable slides to safety. Besides two people being killed, unfortunately.
It could have been a lot worse.
Could have been a lot worse. The way it looked and just the circumstances of a plane crash, period.
Yeah. At the present time, they don't have any suspicion that it was a terrorist thing, just an unfortunate accident, as sometimes it happens.
So it says here 77 Korean citizens on board, 141 Chinese citizens, 61 U.S. citizens, and 1 Japanese citizen on board. And the White House commented, they said that the president sends his thoughts and prayers to the family of those affected by the crash. So, well, I guess a swelling army of firefighters aided by bulldozers, air tankers, and helicopters struggled this past week to subdue the forest blaze that killed 19 firefighters last Sunday and continued carving a destructive path through 2 mountainside communities where residents were forced to flee. This was in Arizona, of course.
Yeah,
Prescott, I believe.
Yeah, last I heard they were estimating they had about 80% of it contained.
Yeah. So our hearts and prayers again go out to those firefighters who lost their lives. They were a part of a elite firefighting group called the Granite Mountain Hotshots, I believe.
These are like the SWAT teams of firefighters.
Yes.
That, they go in with everything, food and water to carry everything. They just march into the fire, and it's their job to create a fire break to essentially starve a fire of having anything to burn so that it doesn't get past a certain point. They're specially trained, and these 19 went in. Some of them were found in their protective, shelters. Some of them weren't. It was the single biggest loss of firefighters' lives since the towers came down on 9/11.
Yes, and of course, every time they go into a blaze, they risk their lives. They never know if they're coming home. And in a story in the New York Times yesterday, they're saying now that the shifting winds, it's kind of a meteorological phenomenon known as outflow, is what would have been maybe the main focus on investigators who arrived there several days later. They're thinking the winds might have caused their deaths in the situation they were in.
It's like a flashover in a house fire, where the air becomes so hot that all of a sudden it ignites. There was serious questions about these shelters that were, are made specifically to protect the firefighters and whether or not they were defective in any way. And I think there's still a question about that, but it's generally acknowledged that the situation itself more than likely would have overwhelmed a perfectly built shelter.
that automatically made me think of the mining disaster here locally in West Virginia not too long ago.
Oh,
with the shelters that they have down in the shafts in the coal mines to protect them from...
They didn't survive that one either.
No. So that sort of reminded me of that story. A shocking video went viral on the web this past week where police officers were caught on tape fatally shooting a dog in front of a crowd of people. Did we post that to the site? I know we put a warning on it, on the front of it, but if you can stomach that story, and if you love pets, you'll want to watch it and try to get through it, because it will just make you angry from your core.
Even if it was justified, the amount of force that they used against the dog was just uncalled for.
And like I told you off the air, that the sad part about watching that video is to see the dog so happy with his master for about 3 minutes before this shooting happens, and then how it all transpired within 30 seconds is just disturbing. Well, now the police department is facing criticism and even death threats from animal lovers across the nation.
They had to pull the police officers off the street.
Yes, they did. 3 police officers were involved in the arrest of 52-year-old Leon Rosby, who they say was disturbing a crime scene by videotaping it and blasting music from his car. Now, while apprehending the man, Rosby's pet Rottweiler, Max, jumped out of an open car window and approached the officers while barking. He had placed the dog in the car because the officers were approaching him and he wanted the dog out of the way.
Right.
But he failed to note the windows were down.
And I could even understand loud music being a disruption at the crime scene, but I don't see how somebody standing away from the crime scene, video recording it, was disrupting a crime scene.
Yeah, he was just like everyone. There was other people there besides him doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's not like he was standing in the middle of where they were trying to look. He was off,
And it didn't appear by watching the video that he was maybe, shouting at the officers or trying to say, "What are you doing?" or something like that. He was just had his cell phone up, his dog on a leash, and was just recording what was going on. Of course, anytime there's a SWAT team down the block, you're going to get a lot of passers-by and people standing around rubbernecking.
Yeah, well, this is just one of the latest examples in what seems to be a war against officials and journalists or press, that try to record the event and get the word out about what's actually happening. We hear about journalists and writers, being suppressed, but it just seems there's more and more instances of people who are documenting an event happening in whatever way they're documenting it. Just the fact that they gets this backlash from law enforcement and official people.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, we're reporting the story. We love our police officers.
Yeah.
There's great police officers out there, but there's certain situations that arise in any police department that maybe would be questionable at times. And once it happens, and it's out there.
You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Right. As evidenced by the Rodney King thing. It was like one of the first videotaped, oh my God, look what happened to him type things.
I mean, even back then, we had the big VHS camcorders and stuff. They were just starting to get out. Now everybody has a camera on their phone. We're getting... it might not be that it's happening more. It's just that people have access to more information, both receiving and sending now that, I've got a camera on my iPhone. Most cell phone users, even if they don't have smartphones, have a camera on their phone,
And that wasn't even from that guy's perspective. It was some dude behind him filming what he went through. So now, after that happened, he put the dog in the car. He started walking to talk to the officers, and one policeman shot the dog 4 times, causing the animal to pretty much shake in the road and bleed to death on the street. And since that has been posted on YouTube, the officers and their families have received threatening phone calls, emails, Facebook messages, you name it. And in some cases, California residents who share the same name as the officers have mistakenly received threats. I guess a shop in Glendale was flooded with angry phone calls because the store owner's name is the same as Hawthorne police spokesman Lieutenant Scott Swain. So it was the Hawthorne Police Department there.
Death threats and physical violence threats are cool at all, but I do think that these people have a right to be angry about what happened.
I think there should be an investigation over the incident, whatever they find, the officers should be...
You just wonder if this is going to be one of those times when truth and justice actually win, or this is just going to be another one of those things where it gets swept under the rug and nothing really happens.
Well, the guy that actually had this happen to him, his dog, he was at a press conference the other day, and he got on camera to ask the people to calm down and stop threatening the families of the officers, even though he just lost his beloved pet. He insisted that not all police officers are bad.
Well, no, they're not.
No.
They never have been, but when they do something wrong, especially when it's so widely publicized and people can see that what happened is not somebody telling you that this happened, it's somebody showing you that it happened.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think people are going to be more angry about that.
And I just hate that story. I hate to even talk about it. But it's there, and we are here to inform. So
we try anyways.
On any of our stories, leave us comments on what you think about them. This may be the first time you've heard of it.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? We'll share your thoughts with everyone next week. Tragedy over the 4th holiday. My goodness, you always hear of maybe a 4th of July celebration going bad from time to time. In Simi Valley, California, a display exploded and sent actual red and white bursts into a crowd of spectators. 39 people injured as a crowd of thousands fled for safety about that time. The victims, from 17 months to 78 years old, had burns and shrapnel wounds, and some were trampled. Authorities and hospital officials said that the injured included 12 children. And then another tragedy in Oklahoma over the 4th of July holiday. An 8-year-old boy died when a trailer being pulled by his father ran over him during an Oklahoma 4th of July parade. A man driving a tractor died in a collision with a vintage fire truck in another parade nearly 2,000 miles northeast. You get some years like that.
The 4th wasn't good in Chicago either. I mean, they're up to over 70 now since then, but on the 4th, it's news that 34 people were victims of gun violence in Chicago alone.
34 people?
Yeah, in Chicago, up till this point, it's over 70 now, but just on the July 4th.
And I hear the youngest of those wounded included 2 boys ages 5 and 7.
Yeah, it's just, I don't understand how anybody could hold the position that gun violence isn't a problem and that we don't need control laws and better background checks on who can own guns. You know, you're always going to have people that illegally own guns, but even being more stringent about the people who are legally owning them should be better. There's over 70 people in Chicago, just one city alone. And anytime anything like this happens, the first thing you're going to get is, we don't need gun control. We don't need gun regulations. But you can't be rational with irrational people, I guess.
Terrible news. Terrible news. We like to kick off the show every week with breaking news and urgent headlines of the week. That's what that was.
We got all the sad stuff out of the way. Well, the really sad stuff.
The really sad stuff out of the way. Still to come on the show, we have, we'll tell you where NSA leaker Edward Snowden might be off to. He's got a few choices now.
Yeah.
And also the uprising in Egypt. The Catholic Church announces 2 new saints. And we'll talk about the veterans of our great country and what they have to go through to file claims and how long it takes, the battle they have to fight after they get out of the service just to get their disability benefits. Want to congratulate Samantha from Oak Hill. Ronnie, she was our winner this past week of our trivia question. She won a great meal from Subway restaurant.
Took a little bit for people to find the answer this week.
Yes, the question was, name the 2 former presidents that died within hours of each other on the same 4th of July. And you have to go back a ways.
Yeah.
But it happened to be John Adams and Thomas Jefferson on July 4th, 1826.
Adams went first, Jefferson went second. One of the last things that Adams is reported to have said is, Jefferson still lives.
Wow.
Because by that point in time, they had, they were old revolutionaries and they corresponded, they weren't the adversaries that they were around the times that they were presidents. But 20 years later, they came from the same revolutionary group that went through the war and everything, so they wrote back and forth thoughts, and it's reported that one of the last things Adams said was Jefferson still lives, and a couple hours later, Jefferson was gone too.
One thing we found online this week, and I just want to touch on it real quick, was, can you pass a U.S. citizenship test? And when we get on the topic of immigration reform and stuff like that, I want to bring that up and give them the website and let the average American take the test without even studying, just see how much you know. You have to get 84 out of 96 questions correct
Here's
to pass.
Brian would have gotten deported. I haven't taken the quiz yet, but Brian wanted to see what it was like, and he informed me that had he had to take it for real, that he would be on a plane back to his mother country right now.
Yes. But, take the test.
Yeah, I still plan on taking it. I just haven't got around to it.
It may shock you. Obviously, they have some sort of a study guide, and then they take the test. But this is just going off of my public education, what I know about the Constitution and the different questions that they ask. But I must have fallen asleep a little bit in those classes because I got 75%, and I would have been not considered a U.S. citizen if I was actually an immigrant wanting to take the test.
Anytime I think about what the general person might or might not know, or should, or you would expect them to know about United States history and whatnot, first thing that comes in my mind are those times when Jay Leno goes out and asks people what I think are relatively easy questions about, general stuff that they should know, and they completely get it wrong. And it's not just one person gets it wrong. There's like 20 of them that gets it wrong before somebody gets it right.
Yeah, that's on the jaywalking.
And I just can't believe that many people can't answer the questions. But maybe it's me. I don't know.
So we will talk about that, and I want you all to take the test. It's online. It's just a quiz. They're not going to come get you. I hope not.
Yeah.
If you fail it, but be honest. Can you pass a U.S. citizenship test? Something to think about. Coming up next on Parts of the Sum of the Whole, we are going to look for Edward Snowden. Where is he off to? What's behind door number 1, 2, or 3? 3 South American countries, possibly. It's all coming up next here on Parts of the Sum of the Whole.
80.
30.
50. Every mile brings us closer.
25.
Every mile in a city near you.
75.
Help us stop diabetes.
100.
Join the Tour de Cure.
60.
Register to ride.
36.
Or sponsor a rider.
50.
Call 1-888-DIABETES or visit us online at diabetes.org/tour. How many miles will you ride?
25.
Hey, welcome back to the Parts and the Sum of the Whole show. Thank you. Mm-hmm. We ask for contributors to our show each and every week, and we've gotten a few bites, and Pat Hardy, who lives in West Virginia, has offered to contribute some different things, maybe a little bit of sports information or trivia, and music reviews. Mm-hmm. And I think that is great. And I want to relay real quick what he wrote about this week was the band Tool, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. And the album is called Lateralis. He said the main thing he can say about this album is that you have to be in the right state of mind to understand it.
I think that's true of any Tool album.
Yeah. There's songs on there like Schism, Parabol, Parabola 3. He said there's just 3 hits right in a row, smack, smack, smack. And he said even some of the tracks that didn't make it to the radio are just Tool in the zone. And he says one of his favorite albums from one of his top 5 favorite bands of all time. And he said next week he wants to kind of give us a review on Black Sabbath's new album with the Ozman.
He's got to be getting up there in age.
I was watching a documentary on Ozzy the other night. All right, the latest in the NSA surveillance scandal. We're going to talk about Edward Snowden, the NSA leaker, and also a second story, which is how it is affecting the European Union right now. But let's talk about Edward Snowden real quick. It looks like that he has finally got some takers on the asylum bid.
Well, he's still in the airport in Moscow. Last week, it was made public that he'd made applications to 24 or so countries, and even to Russia. He withdrew that application, and he got a couple of replies back, either denying him asylum in some of these countries that he applied to, or saying that due to technicalities, like you have to be in our country or in our embassy to apply for asylum and stuff like that he wasn't going to get it. Then it comes out through a new leak by The Guardian, and who's been releasing all these leaks all along, that the NSA and the U.S. have been illegally, in international law, surveilling and eavesdropping on offices and members of the European Union.
I guess Nicaragua, Venezuela, and now Bolivia has joined the growing number of Latin American countries offering asylum to Edward Snowden. So whichever one he chooses, who knows. But Bolivian President Evo Morales said yesterday that Snowden is welcome in his country, and he did not say whether he had received a formal petition from Snowden. But actually, that decision comes after Morales' plane was abruptly rerouted to Vienna last week after being denied permission to fly over France on suspicion Snowden was aboard. Morales said he is making the asylum offer as a protest against the U.S. and European nations he blames for the incident. That president actually on the ground for a while, wasn't he?
Yeah, 15 hours or so.
But speaking of what you just mentioned, the European Union has demanded that the United States explain a report in a German magazine that Washington is spying on the bloc.
They're comparing it with the KGB during the Cold War.
So with the European Union upset now, what can they do about it?
Well, they passed a non-binding resolution that said that if the United States didn't come clean about these questions that the European Union is asking of it now, like to what extent they've surveilled and all that there could be risks to data access that was granted as part of the effort after 9/11 to share information regarding to terrorist acts and the war on terror. You just don't know how far they would be willing to go in relation to whatever answers the U.S. is going to give them. Foreign intelligence is actually what the NSA was set up for. It's not supposed to spy domestically. We've been in an uproar because we found out that they have been. They shouldn't be spying on allies, and it is a breach of international law and treaties. It's like a couple weeks ago when it came out that we were spying on people at the UN and stuff like that. It's the extent to which the United States goes, and that's their main issue with it.
Wow, okay. Well, we'll stay on top of that. We'll let you know if he decides to go to one of those Latino countries. Get ready for your chance to win some great food from Red Lobster, Olive Garden, Longhorn Steakhouse, Bahama Breeze, and Seasons 52. Great food there. And our trivia question. And we'll give you details on what that is coming up after this break as we continue with Parts in the Sum of the Whole.
Yay.
On our week of July 7th.
Can you tell if this burger contains bacteria that could cause kidney failure? Listen. You can't see it either. Use a food thermometer to be sure you've cooked meat and poultry to a bacteria-killing temperature. Raw or undercooked meat may contain bacteria that can make you very sick, or worse. Roughly 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year, but you can keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov. Brought to you by the USDA, HHS, and the Ad Council.
Get ready for this week's trivia question to win a great prize from our vault. Remember, only one person can win within a 30-day period. Good luck.
Okay, thanks. Welcome back in trivia time, of course, and good luck to everyone. How we do the trivia each and every week, we'll ask the question here on the show to give those who listen to the podcast a little head start on the answer. We will post it to our Facebook page, facebook.com/partsinthesum, on Monday, July 8th at 6 p.m. At that point, it's fair game for everyone, but you should know the answer by then. First one to post it wins this week's prize. One winner per month per household, but good luck to you. Here's the question this week. How many countries make up the European Union? How many countries make up the European Union? All right, be ready to post your answer Monday, 6 o'clock Eastern Time on our Facebook page, and you could be this week's winner. Some great food.
Everybody likes free food.
Oh, yeah. Red Lobster, Olive Garden, Longhorn Steakhouse, Bahama Breeze, Seasons 52. So there you go. That is our trivia question this week. A big uprising in Egypt taking place. I saw Richard Engel there reporting for NBC.
He's everywhere.
The man. I guess Egypt's new president has backed away from an announcement recently that pro-reform leader Mohammed el-Baradei would be the interim prime minister. But consultations were continuing as of yesterday, denying that the appointment of the Nobel Peace Laureate was ever certain.
When they first announced it, it was almost like his nomination had already been decided on. But it's always chaos when there's a government overthrown. This is the second time in as many years that the Egyptian military has stepped in to remove a leader from office. They gave the former president of Egypt 48 hours to come to a political solution to
Mubarak, right?
Yeah, a political solution to address the problems that the protesters were upset about, and he just didn't come through, so they supported removing him from power, put him under house arrest.
But after a night of clashes that claimed at least 36 lives and injured more than 200, both sides appeared to be preparing for the possibility of more violence in Egypt as the unraveling of their political system increases. Little room for middle ground or dialogue at this point. Only a fraction of Cairo's normally heavy traffic was on the streets amid worries that violence could flare up again. Morsi supporters have vowed to take to the streets until he is reinstated. His opponents, meanwhile, have called mass rallies to defend what they call the gains of June 30th, which is a reference to the start of massive protests to call for the ouster of the president. State prosecutors said that Morsi would face an investigation next week into claims that he insulted the presidency, and the U.S. State Department condemned the violence and called on all Egyptian leaders to denounce the use of force and prevent further bloodshed among their supporters. Actually, Morsi was ousted in what was described by the presidential palace as a quote-unquote complete military coup. The White House has not labeled Morsi's ouster a coup. Doing so would have U.S. aid implications.
Yeah, you can't support a group that has overthrown a rightfully elected government, and they can complain about this time around, but it was the military who stepped in and took out the dictator a year or two ago, and they did the same thing this time.
And big news out of the Vatican and Rome this week. 2 new saints have been approved by Pope Francis.
John Paul II, which most people are familiar with. He was the Pope before Benedict, who crazily enough they call Pope Emeritus now. And John the 23rd, he called the Second Vatican Council back in the 60s that sat down and decided on how the church needed to come into and deal with modern problems like birth control and stuff like that. It was actually John Paul II who changed the process for nominating and giving somebody sainthood so that people closer to the contemporary time could be used as an inspiration, for a role model inspiration, for people living now, like Mother Teresa. A good part of the world remembers her. A good part of the world remembers Pope John Paul II. But it used to be that you couldn't even begin the process until 5 or 10 years after the death of that person. Mm-hmm. But John Paul II sped that up, and now he's been attributed to his second miracle, and will get sainthood.
Yeah, speaking of miracles, I guess the stipulation for sainthood is you have to perform 2 miracles.
You have to have 2 miracles attributed to you, not just while you were Pope.
Now, Pope John the 23rd
only had 1.
His approval is notable for occurring without proof of a second miracle.
Yeah, they waived it, and I don't understand that.
Okay.
Kind of diminishes the whole elevated holiness of a saint when you can just say, we're not going to make you have 2 to be a saint.
However, John Paul II has had a miraculously swift rise through the stages to sainthood, starting with spontaneous public acclamation of Santo Subito, sainthood swiftly, at his funeral 8 years ago. The second miracle, the cure of a Costa Rican woman from a near-fatal brain aneurysm, and his feast day will be October 22nd. John the 23rd's feast day will be October 11th. And coincidentally, the October 22nd feast day for John Paul II is the anniversary of his 1978 inauguration as the 264th Bishop of Rome.
He was a popular one.
Well, that is great. Great news for the Catholic Church this week. Ronnie, I'm going to get into some history. You want to know what happened this week in history?
Absolutely.
Okay. Let me see here. Off the top of my head, back in July of 1896, William Jennings Bryan caused a sensation at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago with his Cross of Gold speech, denouncing supporters of the gold standard. Bryan went on to win the party's nomination after that.
He was a presidential candidate a few times, and he never got the role. He served in several different administrations on different positions, but he just was never elected himself.
Also this week in 1940, during World War II, the 114-day Battle of Britain began as Nazi forces began attacking southern England by air. By late October, Britain managed to repel the Luftwaffe, which suffered heavy losses.
Yeah, it's Britain's finest hour. Never have so many owed so much to so few. Churchill's famous speeches. Battle of Britain was before the U.S. got into the war. France had fallen already. We didn't come in until December 41, and really didn't get on the ground until after that. But Poland fell, France and England declared war, France fell, and it was just England over there.
On this week in 1950, General Douglas MacArthur was named Commander-in-Chief of the United Nations forces in Korea.
He was the military governor in Japan after the end of the World War II. And he was still in Japan when hostilities broke out in Korea.
Moving closer to present times, on this week in 1977, a 25-hour blackout hit the New York City area after lightning struck upstate power lines. It was on this week in 1979 the abandoned United States space station Skylab made a spectacular return to Earth, burning up in the atmosphere and showering debris over the Indian Ocean and Australia. So, there you go, our friends down under.
Yeah.
A little bit of space trash for you.
We got to dump it somewhere.
Sorry about that.
Mhm.
In 1981 this week, President Reagan announced he was nominating Arizona Judge Sandra Day O'Connor to become the first female justice on the United States Supreme Court.
It was a momentous thing.
Yes. And finally this week in 1984, Democratic presidential candidate Walter F. Mondale announced he had chosen U.S. Representative Geraldine Ferraro of New York to be his running mate. Ferraro was the first woman to run for vice president on a major party ticket. So there you go, some of the things happening on this week in history. Coming up, we're going to focus on our veterans listening in today, and a special report on the claims process, how slow it is, what they're doing to make it faster, the Veterans Administration that is, and the long battle, everyone having to battle for years to get the claims through and the disability benefits they deserve. It's all coming up, and our Dirty Laundry segment. Don't go away. Here on Parts and the Sum of the Whole.
In today's world, it's easy to get tunnel vision with current happenings. You can get lost in the confusion. On our weekly podcast, Parts and the Sum of the Whole, we take the whole picture and break it down to understand the parts of the story in the context you should know. We dig for the truth and try to find facts that some try to hide. We are not a political show or a news show, but we will discuss topics or headlines that are important to you. In general, Parts and the Sum of the Whole is the place to go to find out about everything. Tell your friends and join us each Sunday. Check us out at partsinthesum.com, on Facebook at facebook.com/partsinthesum, on Twitter at partsinthesum, or email us info@partsinthesum.com. And thanks for listening.
Are you ready? Let's go.
HometownStation.net. We play what we like.
Welcome back to Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Want to thank everybody, even here in the studio audience. If we're listening to our podcast, I think we're growing each and every week with listeners and those going to our website to get the latest information. One way I want to make the show better is to have interviews with experts, people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
If you are one of those people and you would like to maybe promote your event coming up, or you are an author or something like that and you want to highlight a book, maybe it's a topic that we need to discuss, get in contact with us. Ronnie, coming up, I didn't realize this until you mentioned it to me. We were kind of discussing it the other day, that this is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy this year.
November 22nd, 1963, at 12:34 p.m.
And we have our feelers out. We're going to try to get Mr. Jack Duffy. He has got a book out called The Man from 2063. He's an author. He is an expert on the JFK assassination. He knows a lot of stuff. We hope to have him on the show.
The assassination holds a primary place with me. That was the first thing I ever really researched.
And I understand what got him interested in it is he actually had a chance to see the Zapruder film before it was released.
Yeah, most people didn't see it until JFK came out. But it's hard to deny that there should at least be questions asked because no good answers have been given.
So as we near November, we're going to try to get Mr. Jack Duffy on the show. That would be really, really cool.
Yeah.
This is our special segment that I've set aside for our veterans, and this past week, Ronnie, I have had the opportunity and the pleasure to be welcomed to at least 3 different Desert Storm, Desert Shield groups on Facebook.
You've been telling me about that.
And what a blessing it is to see and hear all of the my comrades that served in the war that I fought in as well, to be, talking back and forth and showing pictures, and it's just a great, great thing. And I thought, why don't we create something so those folks can maybe interact with us, and we can maybe give them some information about some of the latest the VA is discussing as far as claims. I wanted to highlight the length it takes to get a claim through, and I know the Veterans Administration is going from paper to computer and trying to make things faster, but they also have an influx of claims now from the Iraq War veterans and eventually the Afghanistan War veterans, on top of the already backlog of Desert Storm veterans, and even the Vietnam veterans filing for claims on Agent Orange and different things like that, which I found this, that they had and they do this from time to time, they have a fast track to your claim, and they had that open for Agent Orange claims until July 5th. But if you do have a new disability claim, this is for our Vietnam veterans, you can do it electronically. You can go to www.ebenefits.va.gov, or you can initiate the new claim through your local regional office. And, of course, the veterans number 1-800-827-1000 to get that started. But if you have initiated a claim through the Agent Orange Fast Track website, they ask you to please complete it and submit the claim no later than August 20th of this year, so that the VA can process your claim. And the second thing I was going to talk about today is the veterans returning home from the wars, like myself, having to fight for years after to receive their benefits. You have the burden of proof. You have to prove to them that you have this ailment or this whatever it is you're claiming. You have to prove it through service record books. You have to prove it through medical records. Anything that you might have. There's a lot of medical records missing. From the Desert Storm veterans, you cannot find some records that you need for your claim, and they are lost in space. I have queried personally the National Military Records Personnel Records Center 5 times within the last 2 or 3 years on a certain record that I know was there, and they come back and say, don't know where it is, sorry about that. And that's what these veterans are facing right now. The government is conveniently losing these records. So that's what I want to get this out, is for the new veterans of the Iraq War, the new veterans that will be coming out of the Afghanistan War. Of course, the Desert Storm veterans know how the system's working already, and the Vietnam veterans certainly know how the system's working. They're pushing on 38 years for fighting for their disability. Desert Storm veterans, we're pushing 22 years on fighting for our disabilities. And, of course, the Iraq veterans are just starting out. But as soon as you can, get that claim in. And I recommend you use a veteran service officer at your local VA in your town, and also have a liaison which will back you. In other words, a veteran service organization like the VFW or the American Legion, Disabled Vets, DAV, somebody like that, because it does come in handy. I saw a post from a young veteran who said that I'm using a lawyer straight out of the bat. I'm having an attorney fight for me on my behalf on my claim. Well, the thing about that is an attorney's going to suck up all of the money that he eventually gets.
It is rather expensive.
And these veteran service officers and veterans organizations are trained to help you with your claim. They know the ins and outs, and they deal with your regional offices all the time. So try to use the lawyer as a last resort, maybe on an appeal or something on down the line. But you want to get the most money up front.
Well, yeah, but even finally getting your benefits would be something, even if you didn't get a huge settlement for back pay. Just the fact that you'll be getting money from now on would be a plus. But if you don't have to fork over the bulk of your disability earnings to a lawyer, then you shouldn't. And like you said, there are free services out there available. If it gets to the point where those services and avenues are exhausted, then I could see somebody getting a lawyer. But why pay for something off the bat if you might not even end up needing it?
Well, right now, the Veterans Administration is, they have a program called the Fully Developed Claim Program. It is an optional new initiative that offers veterans and service members and survivors faster decisions from the VA on compensation, pension, and survivor benefit claims. Veterans, service members, and survivors simply submit all required records and documentations at the time they make their claim, and then certify that they have no further evidence. The VA then reviews it, processes it more quickly. But there were many types of claims for disability compensation. For example, if you're filing a VA claim for the very first time, you have what they call an original claim. A reopened claim is a different one. It means that you've added new material evidence, and you want the VA to reconsider the claim once it was denied. And then there are also new claims, secondary claims, and special claims. Veterans may file an FDC for disability compensation for the following reasons: an injury, disability, or condition believed to have occurred or been aggravated by military service, a condition caused or aggravated by an existing service-related condition. Service members may use the Benefits Delivery at Discharge program. That's called the BDD program. And again, you can go to ebenefits.va.gov to submit a fully developed claim before discharge even. But the fight continues, and if we do have any veterans listening to us and you're in that situation, maybe in the middle of a claim or getting ready to start a claim, send us an email at info@partsinthesum.com or make a comment on our Facebook page, what you're going through, and we'll try to get some answers for you if you have a specific situation going on.
Do what we can.
Yes, indeed. And again, I want to thank all of the veterans that we invited to tune in to the show. We want to thank you for tuning in, and we hope you stick around because we will feature new information that we hear when it comes out.
Well, sure.
Ronnie, before we get out of here today, I have some dirty laundry this week. And guess who it is?
I want to say, please let it be something to do with Fox News.
Fox News. Well, you're exactly right. 2 years to the day after news broke that his best-selling tabloid, News of the World, had been hacked, the cell phone of murdered teenager Millie Dowler, Rupert Murdoch himself has been caught on tape now, making a series of explosive statements about his company's cooperation with the police and his attitude toward the last 2 years of the hacking scandal. Rupert Murdoch, who makes our dirty laundry list this week.
Awesome.
Kick them when they're up, kick them when they're down. Rupert Murdoch, our dirty laundry of the week. Well, Ronnie, we're just about out of time. We've blabbered already too much, I think. But our next show comes up on July 14th. And if you would like to be a contributor to our show, just let us know. Get a hold of us somehow. There's several ways to get a hold of us.
We'll see it somewhere.
Yes, we will see it somewhere. In the meantime, enjoy partsinthesum.com, the one place to go for all the information you need to know in the context you should know it. I believe we're going to give away some more, a Facebook gift card next week again.
Those games are addictive, man.
They are very addictive, and they are in high demand, so we might give that away again next week. But until next week, you have a good one.
I'll try.
Thanks for listening to Parts in the Sum of the Whole. Be sure to follow our page all week long for the latest news from all over the world. Items discussed in the show do not specifically reflect the views of our source networks and media partners. Our weekly podcast is produced by Panman Media Studios. Visit our website, www.partsinthesum.com. Copyright 2013. Educate and inform the whole mass of the people. They are the only sure reliance for the preservation of our liberty. Thomas Jefferson.